Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we could be reacting to
Germany's forced airborne disaster, the Battle of Crete.
I wanted to see Crete Vacation.
So I'm assuming they took over Greece to kind of make their push to Crete. I mean, mainland Greece, they kind of occupied then.
Hi, I'm Griffin Johnson, the Armchair Historian. In today's video, we'll be looking at the Battle of Crete, the largest airborne invasion ever attempted by Nazi Germany. While the Germans eventually managed to conquer the island after a 13-day battle, it nearly came at the price of an entire airborne division. In the face of crippling supply shortages and devastating enemy air superiority, the Allied forces fought with stubborn determination alongside the defiant Cretan people. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Call of War. Call of War is a free with other players are free to understanding dominate your opponent, whole continents. I'll be chair historian and remember to join at which includes 1 month of mainland Greece in April of 1941. The remaining Allied forces in the country withdrew to reinforce the garrison on the island of Crete. The defenders' situation was dire from the moment they arrived, as their rapid evacuation had forced them to leave behind most of their equipment. Nearly all heavy weapons and vehicles had been lost, and ammunition was in short supply. Fortunately for the Allies, the Royal Navy remained firmly in control of the Mediterranean, rendering an amphibious invasion of Crete impossible. While German air superiority allowed for frequent bombing raids, Britain's naval dominance kept the island safe for a month following the invasion of Greece. In the meantime, German high command began considering how to invade the island without naval superiority. To many, this simply was not feasible. Some wanted to focus their attention and resources for the imminent invasion of the Soviet Union. And
I wonder why they wanted to, take over Crete. I guess for the same reason how they want to take everything else, but it's kind of not mainland. It's an island, What? I don't know.
simply let the Allies have the island. But others, including Hitler, were concerned about the danger British forces posed to Axis operations in the eastern Mediterranean.
I
So
guess
it's
that's why.
great
Yeah,
positioning.
strategic positioning.
With Crete as a base, the British Royal Air Force could attack naval convoys sent to resupply General Erwin Rommel's forces in North Africa, and their bombers could strike at the vital oil fields in Romania. Playing on these concerns, General Kurt Student, commander of the Luftwaffe's Fallschirmjäger, or paratroopers, and his commander Hermann Göring heavily advocated for an aerial invasion of Crete, dropping airborne forces en masse to bypass the Royal Navy and seize control of the island. Their plan, codenamed Operation Mercury, was controversial and would be the first air-based invasion in history. Though High Command was skeptical, Adolf Hitler eventually approved the plan, on the condition that it did not interfere with the invasion of the Soviet Union. The main objective of Operation Mercury was the capture of Malime, the largest airfield on Crete. Taking it would allow the rapid deployment of supplies and reinforcements to secure the island, and it was close enough to the Greek mainland to allow land-based fighters to support the invasion. Other targets included 2 smaller airfields.
Land-based fighters. So what, they're shooting out of, Greece's land?
Yeah, I
It's
guess
that
they could reach.
close?
And the main port at Suda Bay. The initial invasion force consisted of 750 glider-borne troops, 10,000 paratroopers, and 5,000 airlifted mountain infantry. They were divided into 3 groups, each dedicated to capturing one of the airfields. Group West, the largest of the 3, was to drop first and capture Malime before the others arrived. Göring and the other officers of the German Navy wanted to focus overwhelming force at Malime, while Student, perhaps eager to demonstrate the ability of his paratroopers, wanted to spread his men out across a wider front to surprise the enemy at multiple objectives.
Wow.
Little did he know, the element of surprise had already been lost. The British Ultra program had long since broken the Nazis' Enigma codes, and the Allies knew all of the details of the German plan
I wonder
almost
how they
as
did
soon
that.
as it was made.
That is so cool.
Armed with this
to crack the code.
I think with the what's his name? Turner, I think. Alan Turner or Tuner Turner, something like that. I think his name. He broke with his machine. I think if my memory is not mistaken.
Intelligence, the defenders of Crete dug in and prepared to defend the island.
That's like the very first, cryptography. Yeah.
Shortly after dawn on May 20th, a massive aerial bombardment of Allied positions signaled the beginning of the invasion. Following the bombers and fighters, a fleet of transport planes lumbered into view above Malime, dropping massive waves of paratroopers and supply canisters. As the sky filled with parachutes and gliders, the defenders took up arms and took advantage of one of the major risks of an airborne invasion. Until they landed,
The
dreaded
landing.
Fallschirmjäger
The
were not
landing, they're like very vulnerable because when you get out the parachute is such a slow fall. Unless, I don't know how parachutes work, if you just sky fall and then get as close to the ground as possible. But not everyone will be able to get away with that. That's very, very, very risky.
Turing. Alan
Turing?
Turing. Yes. He was a British computer scientist, mathematician. Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah, he was.
So what do you have to do to enter in? Like, you just have to find you have to be really good at patterns, huh? And creating phrases. How does that even work?
Yeah. During World War, Turing worked for the government's code and cipher school. Britain's codebreak produced ultra intelligence.
What's the one where they do the dots like
Morse code?
yes.
Yeah.
So that's not him, right?
No.
Morse-
Turing devised techniques for speeding up breaking of German ciphers, including improvements to pre-war Polish bomber method.
So what's
etc.
Morse code? That's a different person cryptography.
I would think it was Morse.
Yeah, but like, is that?
I think that was
What do
early
they call
in the
that?
days, because this is more. I think it's more complex than Morse code. Yeah, I remember.
Because what they're doing is everyone has to use the same wave. Like, how are they picking up the
What,
signals?
Morse code?
No, like this guy Turing.
No, there is. Well, I don't know about the Enigma machine. What exactly was the code they used? So I can't like explain it. But the way cryptography generally works is you use some sort of algorithm to devise. So, for example, if each letter in the alphabet is, let's say, A is 1, B is 2, all the way through like 26 letters, right? So let's say a simple cryptography algorithm would be just multiply each letter by 10. No. Well,
But
okay.
you have to
multiply
I get what you're saying.
multiply by 5 and
Yeah.
then take module of 2. Module,
Yeah.
which is the remainder. So like 5 divided by 2 is going to be 1 is the module, because 4 is divisible by 2 and 1 is the module. And that whatever letter that corresponds to, take it to that. So that's letter A, because
And
it's 1.
You could use
So
that
stuff like
code
that.
for that day, and the next day you can switch it.
Yeah, if you can communicate, you can
Yeah.
switch the
So how are they
codes. and-
communicating? Okay, this is how we're doing it.
I don't think they switched anything. I think that's because if you I guess if you are encrypting, or if not encrypting but decrypting the message, and if you able to decrypt the code for that day, you can see, okay, the new message, this is how we're switching, so at that point you can read everything, because you can decrypt
I
every
think they
message.
should have one for like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Has a
I
code,
don't
and
know how
Tuesday.
they did. I don't know if I studied Enigma machine or not. I don't think I did. I don't remember. I do remember Turing's name though. He's like one of the first cryptographers.
But it's good that the British let the Greeks know, like, hey.
nothing but a sea of targets in the sky. Hundreds were shot down before they touched ground, while mortar shells
Yeah, like,
destroyed
this
most
is-
of the gliders as soon as they landed. To make matters worse, those paratroopers who survived were virtually unarmed. Their weapons had been dropped separately, leaving them nothing but knives and pistols to defend themselves in the meantime. This vulnerability was
I would've
exploited
stayed on
to
the
the
plane.
fullest by the carefully positioned
That
New
was the wrong
Zealand troops,
move.
who inflicted heavy casualties on the paratroopers landing to the south and east of Malime before they even knew where they were. Out of the invasion force, only Group West.
Wait. They didn't know they were in Malime? They were in the wrong location?
No, but when you land, they just drop you
Oh,
off.
that's true.
Like you don't have a GPS. Oh, I'm here.
This is a terrible plan.
They just drop you
That's a
off, and you have to. You're not familiar with the terrain. You kind of have to
Yeah,
go down to the coast to see. Okay, I'm on the coast.
Yeah.
Because if you just dropped in the middle of a foreign
That's
country,
true.
how the fuck do you know where you are? You
Ooh,
don't.
That's
So
true.
that's what's going on.
That's true.
Managed to pursue their objective
Wow.
after landing
Look, Hanya, your favorite place.
in a dry riverbed. From there, they engaged the 22nd
Wow, they made it
Battalion
there?
and quickly began pushing back the poorly equipped New Zealand troops.
Wow.
Fighting continued throughout the day, and by sunset, the paratroopers had managed to establish a tenuous foothold west of the Malime airfield. This was far less than Student had hoped to accomplish, and with none of their objectives captured, German commanders in Athens were concerned about the prospects of the invasion. Fortunately, however, what the Germans could not accomplish themselves, the Allies were happy to do for them. The soldiers of Group West awoke the next morning only to find that the New Zealanders, in desperate need of ammunition and resources, had withdrawn from their defensive positions overlooking the airfield. The paratroopers wasted no time in taking advantage of this opportunity and seized the airfield. Soon, German transport planes carrying fresh troops and supplies began landing, and while long-range artillery fire damaged or destroyed dozens of them, enough made it through to turn the tide of the invasion. The Allies recognized the gravity of the situation, but their planned counterattack that night was hampered by delays and hesitation at high levels. When the 20th and 28th New Zealand battalions finally began their assault in the early hours of May 22nd, they were quickly bogged down by air attacks, and by the afternoon they were forced to retreat. The Germans were now in firm control of the Malime airfield, and more were being flown in at a steady rate. Slowly, the Allied forces were pushed east, then south. Over the next few days, German forces...
This has a lot of history here.
Yeah, we don't cover this in here in the States, nor in Lithuania. I never covered this. Overall, I do not know really what happened in the Balkans during the World Wars. I do not recall studying that at school. In Lithuania, we heavily focused on, the Eastern Front. We learned about the Western Front too, but it was heavily focused. And here in the States, it was mostly Western Front with a little bit of Eastern Front. And none of these covered the Balkans. I don't know what the fuck was going on there.
Cautiously advanced towards the port of Suda Bay, bombing Allied positions.
Well, and I guess, we also covered the Pacific too, because that was part of the war.
From the air before probing their defenses and attacking the beleaguered defenders where they were weakest. By May 27th, the Germans had seized control of the main roads leading to the bay, and Suda's garrison, along with that of the city of Hanya, were beginning to falter.
Wow.
Facing intense aerial bombardment and an increasingly desperate supply situation, the Allies were forced to stage a full retreat. The defenders headed for the southern beaches of Sfakia, where the Royal Navy would evacuate them to Egypt. The retreating troops could only move at night for fear of bombing and strafing by the Luftwaffe during the day. The march was brutal, but most managed to maintain cohesion during the crossing, while Australian and New Zealand forces in the 5th and 19th Brigades held off the pursuing Germans. Despite operating at roughly half strength and with very little ammunition, the
Wow, Australia and New Zealand, so they all went to fight all the way here. They didn't, because I would think like those countries would fight in the Pacific. Wow, that's interesting.
Anzac forces in the rear guard fought on. And on the morning of the 27th, they managed to halt the enemy advance with an old-fashioned bayonet charge. This engagement became known as the Battle of 42nd Street, and it bought Commonwealth forces precious time to make it over the mountains and begin their evacuation. Over the next 4 days, the Royal Navy extracted thousands of soldiers from the southern coast of Crete, with the pursuing Germans following closely. The New Zealand rearguard continued to hold the enemy back as long as they could, but they were gradually pushed back closer and closer to the beaches of Sfakia, where the evacuations were taking place. On the morning of June 1st, the Germans arrived at the beaches to find about 5,000 soldiers left behind. The rest were on their way to Egypt. Tired, hungry, and finally cornered, the remaining defenders surrendered, bringing the Battle of Crete to an end. Throughout the battle, German forces faced heavy
Now you know. I didn't know either, but now we know.
resistance from the civilian population. Villagers shot at the invaders with rifles taken from local museums. Paratroopers were stabbed and clubbed upon landing. And armed civilian mobs even joined in several counterattacks by the Greek army during the retreat. This was the first time that the Nazis had experienced such extensive resistance from a civilian population, and they did not take it well. Reprisals and massacres against the Cretan people were frequent and bloody, prompting the birth of the Cretan resistance just 2 weeks after the battle came to a conclusion. While the battle for Crete ended in a victory for the German invaders, the price they paid was extensive. 6,000 men were killed and nearly 300 aircraft were destroyed. These staggering losses led Adolf Hitler to conclude that the paratroopers could no longer exploit the element of surprise, and they would therefore never be used ever again in a large-scale airborne invasion. After the war, General Student would refer to Crete as the graveyard of the paratroopers.
Wow.
Interesting. Wow. Is there more? No.
Thanks again to Call of...
Oh no.
At least that's a positive. No.
Yeah, I guess positive. It sucks that they got occupied, but mm,
Can I see the comments?
wow, very interesting. We didn't know none of this.
Mm-mm.
I'm gonna be honest here. Another cinematic masterpiece amazed how much further the quality of this contest has been going up. My great grandfather fought at Crete. He served for the New Zealand Army. He
Wow.
has told me that he remembered while happy that they had the tactical advantage over the Germans, he felt really bad for the defenseless paratrooping Germans that his battalions were just mowing down. Ooh.
Oh.
He also told me that the Greeks were very brave people for helping them defend against the Germans with minimal supply. He
Mm.
was eventually evacuated to Egypt when the island fell. I remember him telling me though the soldiers were fighting for awful people and a despicable cause, they're still just men, normal men,
Oh.
that had
Wow.
all a long life ahead of them, cut short by this pointless
Wow.
war.
What? That's a good message.
Mm,
Mm.
wow.
Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord. And as always, share as much kindness as possible.